Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Yeah, and Brent, I got to meet him at that seniors, and I used to trade emails with him. It's been for a long time, too long, but very humble. He was also a family man, a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I had seen on social media, like within the last few years. I mean, his son, I think, was a college Division I athlete somewhere. It was really good and a strong lifter.
Well, I know I follow him on Instagram, and he's lifting now, and every now and then I think he sneaks videos of his dad that he puts in, because I actually talked to him and I go, hey, would your dad be on my podcast? I go, I would absolutely love to sit down and just reminisce and talk about lifting with your dad. And he's like, he doesn't really, like, he kind of keeps a low profile. And I'm like, well, if he ever changes his mind, he has an open invitation. Like, because I would love to sit down and talk training with him. But his son's doing pretty good too. I mean, his son's getting strong.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it always amazes me, and I can pull a rope, I won't push it, but when I come across a lifter or track down a former great lifter or something like that, it's always kind of interests me that when they don't get interested in it. Like growing up idolizing Ted Arcidi, I've heard many times that people like, man, like, because he's an actor, right? He's been in the Town, and he's been in the Equalizer 2. He's had these parts. And he shows no interest in ever getting involved and just jumping on someone's podcast and talking about, because to me, I think you have so much to share, like people are interested and they care. But that doesn't surprise me about Brent either. He's like a low key guy. And, as he was missing a finger, right?
Yes.
I mean,
that really, if you ever look back at any of his deadlifts, and I think he was still pulling over 8. But his grip on that hand is it was never his back that failed. It was his grip on that hand, because he was missing the main, what is that, your index finger, I guess. And so I remember one meet, he missed his last one, and one of his guys threw him a wrap. So he put a wrap on really quick and then pulled it. And it was kind of like, I think he might have been saying, listen, this is only because of my finger, not because of my back.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he was born with that. He found wasn't it his mother's service revolver when he was younger, and he blew his finger off.
Yeah, I did. I've never heard this story. I just heard it was something. It was a gunfire, and
yeah,
I heard. I mean, if you ever watched, I had his old. This is how old I am. I had his old VHS tape, and I mean, this guy's doing 405 good mornings to parallel for sets. Like, that's after his squatting. That's like a back set.
Yeah,
and it was dude, that's a strong back right there.
Yeah, I have his tape somewhere too. I don't post anything unless I can get in touch with somebody, and like if I think it's their property, right?
Yeah.
Like I used to do a little work for Ned Lowe, or Powerlifter Video Magazine, so I have most of those episodes. So I'll post those, and I know Louis Simmons was already paid for that, so I'll post some of his stuff, a clip from that, but I won't post Louis' VHS and DVD products, because they still sell some of those. So I never want to be that guy, but yeah, I'm always amenable, because even though I was in law enforcement, Chad, like all those years, because I wrote for Powerlifting USA, I wrote for bodybuilding.com, I wrote for another magazine which shall remain nameless that didn't pay me, and I wrote for Josh Bryant, Josh's Josh Strength's website, and I have my own book, Built by History, on Amazon. But I like to write, and I always do it. So hold
on, let me give you a shout out for your book. So it is on Amazon, right?
It is correct,
because I think you gave me the copy though, but it's a good book, and there's a lot of, you go through a lot of history and how you kind of got where you got, and like, it's interesting to hear how you talk about guys that did, this so-and-so is famous for this, but this person was actually doing very similar stuff before that. I think all that's interesting to see how things kind of all came out to where they are in the end. So if you can go to Amazon, what's the name of that one again, the book?
It's Built by History.
Okay. Yeah, because it's worth getting. I think it's a good read, and I don't even like reading, so.
I appreciate it. You can get in digital, you can get in hard copy, and it's 193 pages. But what you were alluding to before, so when I graduated from college, I was hired as a federal agent under the Outstanding Scholar Program, believe it or not. But the guy who saw my paperwork in DC, I was a powerlifting All-American in the ADFPA, and I had a national record in the deadlift, and I also graduated with a 3.5. So he hired me. So when I got my entire career, I was in Office of Inspector General. So that's like internal affairs for the Department of Justice, then Homeland Security. So my writing style, Chad, was always attribution, like kind of like how I would write a report or an
Mm-hmm.
affidavit. Like I didn't just say, you know, I said where I was influenced by. I said the sources of information because I like that. I think there's nothing worse than not giving some credit where credit's due. And, you know, in the fitness industry, you see some of that with, and there's also some blissful ignorance. Like nowadays, they just people like, oh, you do this, you do. They'll quote Prolipin's chart, but they won't say it's Prolipin's chart. They won't quote Louis Simmons. Like, you know, Google's your friend, and like support this
I
stuff.
actually
So,
get
but
there's someone that criticizes me for saying stuff, and I'm like, dude, anything I say is probably something I got from somebody else. Like, I mean, I don't really know if anything's truly original anymore, but because
right.
I've learned so much over the years, and like everything I learned is even if it's partially mine, it's an idea off someone else. Like people go, oh, you train West Side. I'm like, well, no. I mean, yes and no. Like, yeah, I pretty much
Mm-hmm.
train West Side, but there's some tweaks to it. And like Dave Tate used to always try to get me to write a book. And I'm like, yeah, but all I do is this. I just do conjugate. And he's like, yeah, but it's your style of conjugate. And so like the credit thing, I get a little absent minded sometimes. And like, I'll rip off a quote and forget to say who it's from, but it's like, this is just my version of it.
Yeah, no, I'm like you in that like I get so passionate about it when I'm talking. That's why I kind of find it. I love talking to somebody like yourself. I have so much respect for you, and I appreciate our friendship and the fact that I was watching your career. I kind of parked my strength career um, in '04 when I moved to Dallas and was busy and new job, new city, family was young, but I got my fix, if you will, by YouTube hadn't really taken off, but by through the elite FTS logs.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I felt, quote unquote. I knew you, like I knew about, like I would read the guys doing it in the fight because I'm like, man, I don't, I never, I always, every little cliche is true for the most part, right? Cry, smile because it's over. Don't cry, you know. Smile because it happened. Don't cry because it's over.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yep.
like I thought that was so neat that the when I got out of high level powerlifting, the WPO really took off with it. But I would learn from so, but I found it easier to write a book, and the story of my book goes as such. It comes at a time when I started writing that in 2018 when my kids were all in high school. So my kids all played sports and did activities. So I literally wrote chapter by chapter in my iPhone that I'm talking to, well, a different model I'm talking to you right now on, but like I wrote a chapter as I'm waiting for their bus to come back. Or like when my daughter played volleyball, like when she played freshman volleyball, you'd go watch her play, but then like it was one bus, so all three levels were on it, JV and varsity. So when they're done playing the freshman games, they have to side spot and do stuff. So then I'd be in the stands, I'd be writing.
Mm-hmm.
I would write. I tried to show my kids that there's like Henry Rollins says, there's no free time, there's no downtime, there's time. Go. So I wrote that book as I had all the ideas in my head, and I found it so much easier to give back and thanks to those people. If one person reads it and it's like, man, that guy's this worked for him, and he says he learned it from John Cole and he learned it from Terry McCormick or Art LeBear or Josh Bryant, and it's Louis Simmons for sure. You know, like
Yeah.
anybody that helped me along the way, I tried to quote. It's a way to say thanks, you
Yeah.
know, and it was the least I could do. It bothers me as a writer. I haven't written anything really in a while per se, and sometimes I take notes, but I but Amazon's been good to me. If they send me an email about every 3 months, like, hey, have you thought about turning that book into an Audible book? Which I
That's
see.
not a bad idea.
Right. Yeah, you have the equipment there, and my partner down in town has it. He's busy, but I just have to sit and do it. Just enough. I wrote the book. I just have to sit and grease up the pipes and.
You know, it's interesting, like kind of what you were saying, and I'm really good in the gym about it because I have this one exercise that I do it's basically a JM press, but it's in a Smith machine. So I call it a Cas press because that's where I first read about it. Was Kazmar used to do these tricep skull crushers basically, but to his clavicle, and I go, well, that's a JM press, but it's in a Smith machine, which is different than JM's press. So I'm like,
Correct.
I don't want to. I call it a Cas press, but I tell people it's still a JM press because like I'm giving credit. I'm trying to give credit to everybody. I mean, if you think about every exercise, every exercise probably goes back to somebody. I remember people calling elbow out extensions a Tate press, and so I was training with Dave one time, and I said something about a Tate press, and he's like, no, I got it from so and so, so he doesn't call it a Tate press, and it's like, dude, you could probably go back with all this stuff to somewhere else. And I tell people, I go, I might have came up with this, probably not, but you never know. Like some stuff I had, there are some exercises I came up with, but a lot of it's a variation from somebody else or something else. And I think with lifting, it's funny because like I've learned, it was interesting for me as I came up because as I'm coming up and getting better, at one point I kind of looked around in the gym that I was at and I go, wait a minute, why am I listening to all these people? Like none of these people are where I want to go. Like I need to find better people to listen to. And it was kind of like you said about going to that meet and being around people that are lifting the numbers that you want to lift. So then I start looking at better people and I start getting in better meets, and then I meet better people. And I get in bigger meets, and now I'm meeting even bigger people. And I look back over my career and I'm like, God, like I've been handed down so much amazing information. It's kind of hard to remember who it all came from at some point.
Yes.
I can be like, oh, my buddy Russ told me about twisting against my thumb in the bench. Oh yeah, it was Rob Luendo. I think it was Rob told me about like shoulder width fourboards, or maybe that was Vinny, and you're just trying to think about, you've heard so much great little tidbits here and there that you're like, man, my brain's fried. I don't sleep enough to remember all this shit.
Yeah. No, I do know I've been gifted by so many people, and,
but that's the beauty. That is one of the beauties of powerlifting is like, dude, I found a few people, maybe less than a handful of people that were tight-lipped about everything. Like all these great people and these amazing, scary, huge, monstrous men are totally willing to help out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's like everybody, it was funny when I went into Highland Games because I was like, oh my God, like, that's so-and-so and that's so-and-so and there's Harrison Bailey and did it. And I'm like all amazed at these top pro level throwers. Well, it turned out they kind of knew who I was. And so they're like, hey, dude, it's like, oh, we want to help you with your technique because we just want to see what you can do knowing how strong you are. And I'm like, well, dude, can I help make you stronger so I can see what you can do? And it was just like everybody was pretty open to just see everybody do their best. And of course, everyone wants to beat everyone, but I'd rather beat somebody at their best than beat them when they're down.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. That was always my experience, no matter in my professional career in law enforcement and the different levels of people I met, all the politicians and certain, folks in certain circles. To me, there was nobody more my peer group than strength athletes, right? Like, and the reason I think is because like as long as you don't waste their time or interfere with what they're doing, like the super strong people will tell you, because there's no hack. There's no easy way. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard work. It's not, I'm not giving you a shortcut. It's nothing you can buy. Your daddy's uncle can't hook you up with it. Mama's friend can't give it to you because you're a family. Like you got to earn it.
Yes.
And the real strong people know that. I mean, my experience, the only people more humble, but at the same time, there's a few of them too, like in the pro fighters that I've met, I've met some, and
That's honestly the truth. I can give you this little tip, but if you don't do the
mhm,
work, it still ain't going to do shit. So I don't really care.
that's right. Yeah, and it's just not. It's not in an egotistical way, but you're just like you said, like you were referencing, like you looked around certain gym settings, and you're like, man, none of these people will want to go. Like I have a globe. They call it a Globo gym. So I have a Globo gym membership here in town in Tucson, and it's $9.99 a month. And no, it's not the purple place. Um, but it's cool. It has Alico plates and straight bars and an outdoor deck, and it's $9.99. It has it must have 12 power racks.
Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah.
It's called Choose. It's called CUZE. It's $9.99. It has some things I don't have in my garage, but what it has is what happens. I noticed after 15 years of living in the desert, by the end of the summer, I'd be getting cramps in places like abductors, adductors. You just get wore out because the
Yeah.
Tucson summer is 6 months long. So I train in my garage, which is it's not conditioned. I have fans, but it can be over 100 degrees, and it's cumulative. Like by the end of the summer, August or something, I'm just like, man, I'll cramp, or I'll just like, man, I need a break. I'm going to go in there and do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean this in an egotistical way, but I will sit back and watch people training, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't mean this in a bad way, but with how big Amazon is and online shipping and UPS, like most of these people should just go get a job at a warehouse moving 50, 40-pound boxes, because they're going to burn calories and then earn pay, but they're going to build as much strength. You're really not, what are you doing? It doesn't, I don't mean that in a bad way. Like,
That's
you know
actually
what I'm
that's
saying?
actually a really interesting perspective. Like you're probably going to get more out of it and get paid. Like because the way you train in a gym sucks.
Yeah, you're moving around aimlessly, but like every once in a while, you'll see, like here in Tucson, it's like Bigfoot. There's later today, look up, Google, put in YouTube, put in West Putnam. He's about 6'5", about 335, 350. He cooks off a set in the incline with like 500 pounds about 10 years ago at Platinum Fitness, which was Gold's gym at one time. And it's on YouTube. It has over 100,000 hits. I see Wes in town every once in a while. He's like, I'm not interested in any competition. And speaking of Cole, when I announced last year, it at Tucson Strength, my friend owns that gym, Danny Swire. He's the USPA state chair. Great guy. We had a guy named, it's on my Instagram. His last name's Brown. He's like 34 years old. He's like 290. He unracked and benched 590 raw on his own, and then missed 611. Missed the biggest raw bench in Arizona history by a hair. And I never heard of him before. So for every 10 people at a Globo gym that are doing nothing, there's somebody that walks out of a gym and's like, wow, that's
Yeah.
what kind of makes what we're interested in is special.
Yeah.
But yeah, for most people, I would just say, man, get a program. And this isn't, I coach, I know you coach. I mean, I sell a book. My friend Josh Bryant sells about 15 books. The saga.
Josh has got a bunch of really good books.
Yeah, and if you
I
look
need to
like,
get Josh back on here too. I really love talk. Josh is so smart, and I like the way he says things or expresses things.
yeah, Josh was a teenager when he used to come to my house.
Mm-hmm.
He used to drive 140 miles one way to come squat with us. And look what he's, it's like a coaching tree, right? I think like you watch college football, they talk about that. But like I coached Josh and he coached me. Super generous, nice, salt of the earth kid. And then now he's coached more 600-pound raw benchers than anybody,
Yeah.
right? Including Julius. So like, yeah, Josh, to see what he's done in his career and how many people he's helped is amazing. It's and I listen whenever he's on a podcast. I listen. His books are amazing. He makes one of his books is the saga of the Tijuana Barbell Club. I think it's about 15 or $20, and it has a lifetime of templates and training ideas in there.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say it's not good to have a coach. Again, I coach people. I have coaches myself. I get information from people, and I find invaluable. But it's just good. It's good that those opportunities exist. And but yeah, my message to anybody is like, really, if you're interested in really progressing in a strength sport, the key is, Louis Simmons says it first. I listen to his podcast all the time. You know, God rest his soul. It'll be 3 years soon since he passed. But he said the first thing a man needs is a power rack. The second thing he needs, because Louis did it on his own for 6 years, right?
Yeah.
While he was a crane operator and married, but then because you can always train safely in a power rack, and then the second thing you need is a training crew. You know, my lifts hit their best when I had 7 people in my garage that could all squat over 700. All bench over 400 raw down in Yorba Linda. We called it Yorba Barbell. We were right. Once you see, you can be, you know, and
well, also, would you say this? You also had 7 coaches.
Oh, yes. That cared. And
yes.
It's not just
so if you're down, they're going to pick you up. If you're doing something stupid, they're going to tell you you're doing something stupid. If your technique is not right, they're going to let you know, you know?
Yeah, and those guys, I love those guys to this day, and they loved me, and also it was a different day and age with the rule books, right? Like now, when you go to a meet, and I announce it like USPA meets, and they have an official platform crew, even at the state level meets, and those guys are paid professionals doing a good job, and there's rules like if there's a 600-pound squat on the bar now, they have to have 8 spotters. There's rules, right?
Okay.
Every federation is a little different. But when I was going to go squat at a meet, 800 plus, my boys were there because my boys knew me.
Yeah.
And if I ended up on the deck and something went bad, I mean, yeah, I had insurance, but they saved my neck. If Art LeBear was going to hit the deck, he's got 3 young daughters and a wife, and he's a drywall contractor. Nobody's going to pay. We would save each other's neck.
Well, then you have guys that know you, and if something's a little wrong, they know either grab the bar and tell everyone to take it, or no, he's fine, he's good.
Yes, yeah. So that I used to love that aspect of it, and I could see both sides of it. You know,
see, we had and once I got into the WPO, we had Chris Weirs.
Big Chris from Maine.
He was the best back spotter of all time. He came up to me one time after one competition. He's like, dude, I hope I didn't grab you too early. And I go, dude, Chris, I don't know what kind of weird sixth sense you have. If you touch me, I'm totally cool with it. Because I don't know how you know, but you seem to sense anytime anything is wrong. I go, so I will never, ever question. If you grabbed me, I'm going to assume something was going wrong. Because that guy that guy was good.
Yeah, and he was raised up by Russ Barlow, who was an elite lifter, high-level lifter out of Maine. And Kieran Kidder was out of New Hampshire then. But like whoever, I don't know Chris that well, but I've met him before, and he was a huge man. And he had a hell of a lifting career himself.
Yeah, he was a strong guy.
Strong guy, but that's what it takes. That's who you need in there. You know what I'm saying? Even look at the other sports that followed. Like, look when the UFC stood up. Who was their first ref? Big John McCarthy.
Yeah.
You know he totaled over 2,000 pounds?
I did not know that.
And he was a member that right before it died out. You ever hear of Samson's Gym in city of Orange, where like Bill Kazmaier?
I've heard of Samson's Gym. Yeah.
Yeah, he was training out there in the late 80s. Before, yeah, he was a powerlifter first.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so Big John McCarthy like ruled the roost in there, right? Like nobody ever says strong and big; they say big and strong. It's not jelly and peanut butter, right? So if I'm about to go to something, you know, if I'm about to go something risky, I want to see some big bunch of guys around me that know, that have done it themselves and know, hey man, if the shit hits the fan, protect me. Because you know, there's boo-boos, and then there's like you at the level we were lifting at, you for certain, like when you're talking anesthesia and copays. Yeah. I don't
well, I've been down with the 1,053 and 1,172. And I'm so lucky that I spend so much time on my flexibility and mobility. And, you know, now they use the straps, and you think, you go back to Ed Russ. What if they would have had straps, man? If they just would have had straps, that would have been a whole lot less than what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm of the opinion, after seeing it, like a couple Arnold Classics ago, the strongman contested the squat with like safety boxes adjacent. I'm kind of the opinion that they would need that for some of the bigger classes. Yeah. You know, just so nobody's, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't want to see any injury, because I've also seen, right? So people have lost fingers getting it stuck in between the straps, right? A few times,
Yeah.
sadly.
Yeah.
I mean, the squat, all heck can break loose, and you just don't want to see that. And
Well, if you're talking guys that are squatting 1,000, 11, 1,200 pounds, like I don't care how many guys you got around it, there's nowhere to grab, and that's a lot of weight.
Oh my goodness! And
Like,
then it's in motion,
yeah,
and the physics, and like, because isn't it? It's not West Side versus the World, but it's the other movie, the Bell movie that your falls in that, right?
yeah.
And that was 1076, right?
No, that one was 1172.
My goodness.
Makes me laugh every time too.
I haven't seen that movie in a while. It was excellently done. And where was that? Was that at a WPO show or a power station?
That was one of the APF seniors in Vegas.
And were you seriously injured on that?
No, I tore my medial collateral. No, I strained my medial collateral ligament. That was it.
Wow.
I'm super flexible.
I didn't do as much flexibility. Well, I attribute it to I attributed my training style. If people look at my YouTube videos and see that I used to squat to, I squatted, my best box squat was a 740 with a suit straps down and some knee wraps on tight. A 740 to a 12-inch I stood up with pretty easy to. I would force myself to lower boxes right when I squatted.
Yeah, you did squat to some way low boxes.
Yeah, my thought process was like, and when Simmons had wrote about squatting to a hassock, I had a hassock. We bought it at Walmart. It was $12.99, and it was like the foam would dissipate the energy, make it harder, and then it was round, so you could put a Vanco 45-pound plate under it to raise it an inch, and whatever I could squat to that with a belt and briefs on, I would go to a meet in full gear and squat well over 100 pounds. Because I looked at it as like training as like running in sand, make it hard, and at the same time force flexibility into it. So when you talk about flexibility, but
you got to think with that though. I think people make the mistake of like, well, I'm going to make myself hit, so they let their knees cave in and everything. Where like you just said it, no, I'm going to use it for flexibility. So you probably went, I'm going to keep my technique and use the weight to make myself hit the box.
Yeah. Not even hit the box, but stretch me down there.
Yeah.
And it's, not to get off on a tangent, but I watched my YouTube. I watched Mitchell Hooper today, his new YouTube video, who's, the reigning strongman champ. He spoke at the Stark Center yesterday and posted it. He's like, yeah, my size now. He goes, I need about 400 pounds on my back to get down any place, because he's adding all this muscle mass.
Yeah.
But I didn't do, so I did a lot of low box squats. My height was always 12 inches and sometimes 10 or 11 inches to a cinder block or a milk crate. And that was at my strongest. I never went a lot of high box work. And I would hear other guys saying, oh, we go 15 inches. And I never did it high like that. But when I started, my senior year of high school, for 2 years, I took American style Taekwondo real serious. So I was still a teenager. My football career was over, but I did a lot of what I would read about it later was what Hatfield deemed it PNF stretching, to force a limb up and then flex it down. So I'd be at Taekwondo practice. American style Taekwondo would just kind of be like, it was like one step away from Muay Thai. It was a lot of fighting. And we were a tributary school in Massachusetts under Billy Blanks. You know, that is right. Like Taibo.
I remember Billy Blanks. Yeah.
But Billy Blanks, before he was Taibo guy and went mainstream and to make a killing, he was Marvin Hagler's bodyguard in Massachusetts. And he was a full contact fighter in the 80s when there was no UFC. So I've seen him incline press 405. Wow. Billy Blanks was a bad dude. So that was a tributary school to us. So, but my point of that is I did a lot for over 2 years. I did a lot of forced, as my powerlifting was taking off, as I went from a 500 to a 600 squat and deadlift in my late teen years, I was doing aggressive stretching like that, which I think a lot of this stuff had me pretty injury free till I finally wore out this year with that hip. Yeah.
No,
But
I actually think there's strength and flexibility. Like I know some of the West Side guys and some of the bigger guys are like, no, I want to be tight. And like they wanted to make their body into a suit basically. And I'm like, but from what I had studied in school and from what I had learned and doing some research through the Russian stuff, like a tight muscle is not going to flex as well as a flexible muscle. Like you're not
that's
going to
right.
get as good a contraction because you have the other safety deals. I think the Golgi tendon, muscle spindle fiber, like all those things. So I always maintained, I stretched heavy to get flexible, and then it didn't take as much to maintain it for me, but I always maintained it throughout my career. Even to this day, actually.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and it's critical for your lifting performance, but also, your passion. You like to ride BMX, and you do other things. You live, like you said, your photography. You like to ride you like to ride quads. For me, my training was like it was all about powerlifting. And then I started having kids. And at first, when the kids come, they're little and small, right? Obviously, babies. But then once they started having activities, I didn't want to miss out.
Yeah.
So I had lost a little bit of weight anyways. But I would do different things when they were at practices, if you will. I wasn't some of this. I coached some little league. I coached some flag football. I coached a little football. I didn't not a major coach, but I was involved in their stuff. But I would be at their activities and like, man, the other parents just sit around and stuff. I'd pull off to this. I did it. I did so many different things to stay fit. It was nothing for me to have in my car, in the trunk, a pair of 55 and a pair of 50 and a 35-pound kettlebells. Like my son had one couple seasons where he was doing basketball, but it was at outdoor park. So he's being coached by the experts. So I'd be over doing kettlebells by myself. I just go off and do it, and I would try to maintain all kinds of shoulder flexibility with those and so forth. Because it's like you said, use it or lose it. I didn't want to.
So do you think that helped with your overall strength too?
Everything, yeah. And to steal a quote from Louis, everything fueled my fire. Everything, if it was either an advantage or a disadvantage.
I almost think it's like a what do I say? It's like a timeline kind of like strength training. Like it's always going to be evolving and changing. And when you start, yeah, you need to train really hard. You need to hit the weights hard. You need to be consistent. You can probably train 5, 6, maybe even 7 days a week hard. But then as you get stronger, things are going to have to change. And there's going to be a point where it's like, dude, I'm lifting so heavy and it's so taxing on my body. I need to lift heavy less often, but I need to add in some of this GPP or kettlebell work or this other stuff. And I think it's really an evolution. And I mean, even with if you go into bodybuilding and you look at Menser and the other guys that did the HIIT training and stuff, it's like an evolution over time, of what you can do. Because I don't care if you're 1,000-pound deadlifter. I don't care how often you deadlift 1,000 pounds, it's still going to be extremely taxing in your body. I don't think you're ever going to get to the point where it's like, hey, I've trained so much I can pull 1,000 pounds every day. Like, I don't think so.
Yeah. No, when I got up into the 700s, which wasn't a great deadlift, but 21 years ago, 03, 02, like Gary Frank and Andy Bolton were trading in the all-time deadlift records at 933 and 934. Like 20 years ago, there was less than 10 people that had deadlifted over 900. Now, the deadlift's gone crazy. Say what you will. To me, I know they changed the bars, but at the same time, there's more people lifting heavy. The strongman had a ton of things to do with it because they're bending their legs hundreds of times against resistance. So, of course, they're going to be stronger. So, but yeah, when Bolton, I remember getting Bolton's DVD because I support any lifters, and I thought it was awesome. So I saw Bolton's like deadlift workout was like he would deadlift heavy, and then the next day he would train upper back hard on machines. Like for me, the day after deadlift, I couldn't train. Like I was shot. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
I couldn't.
It would tax my CNS pretty hard.
Yeah.
But what Andy doesn't, what a lot of people don't know is that Andy was really good at controlling his intensity. And so you might be like, dude, he deadlifted heavy that day. Well, for him, it wasn't really heavy because he was judging more on the speed that he could pull it at. Like, I almost think he did like he didn't have a VBT device, but he was kind of basing his training a little bit from talking to him a little bit on like how quickly he could pull it. Like, he was more worried about pulling it fast than the weight that he was pulling.
Yeah, I never had the pleasure. I'm a fan, and he had a lot of material like that. I bought some of his materials, anything I could find, and he was profiled in Flex magazine, and his deadlift program was he did partials like
he did a lot of partials. Yeah,
he did a lot of partials, kind of like my friend Brad Gillingham, who I think the world of. But that just didn't work for me. I would have preferred to meet, and I have Brad's programming too, but like that didn't work for me. I needed to do full range of motion deadlifts work for me, but they're far greater pullers than I am. But like when I was pulling at my best, deadlift was I would do the West Side deadlift program that Louis rocked about 15 singles, 12 singles, 10 singles. It would cycle back. I would never go more than like 82% to 6 singles. Then I go to a meet 10 days later and I could pull over 100 pounds more than it. That would work for me as long as I work box squats beforehand and some assistance, right? But like a heavy deadlift workout for me was I tried to time it so like I did it and then I went home and slept. I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And I next day I would characterize it as the deadlift flu, like about 2 o'clock in the day.
It just kicks your butt, man.
Yeah, I'd go to work and stuff. And you'd wake up the next day kind of exhilarated, like, oh, okay, that deadlift workout was killer. But like midday, you'd be dragging ass and like yawning, like your body's dying for recovery. Right?
I think that's the difference between muscular fatigue and central nervous system fatigue.
100%, and so now as a old student of the game, I really like a lot. There's a lot of people that I like their social media and I learn from, like Eddie Hall pulled that 1,100 pound deadlift with straps, but Eddie was just plain as day in one of his videos said, hey, I was like 880, which a lot of the strongmen get up to like 880, like 400 kilos. And he goes, until I alternated a heavy workout with a light workout, I made no progress.
Yep.
You get to nothing goes up linearly, and the deadlift is like it literally is just a deadlift right there. Like you don't have any eccentric load into it. It's just pure concentric rate of force development. So it can be really it just can be very taxing, and you can burn out on it quicker than anything.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Brad because I just saw he had an Instagram. And so I like immediately followed him and I sent him a message and I'm like, hey man, you probably don't know me, but like when I was coming up in powerlifting, like you were like the IPF guy. And like he was one of those guys I was always looking at, what did Brad do at that meet? Oh, we just did Worlds. How'd Brad do? And like, I mean, I really looked up to him and I was never a great deadlifter, but man, that dude could pull. And I don't know how strong his hands are, but his hands got to be strong as shit.
So I've never met Brad. When I was at the Arnold last year for arm lifting, he walked by, but I was with the group and I couldn't divert because if I did, I'd still be talking to him. Right. Super humble. I'm a huge fan. He has over 100 documented 800 pound pulls in the IPF.
Yeah.
Which means he's drug free and drug tested and never.
That's with an old straight bar too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's in foreign countries after you squatted in bench. So he was a three-time open IPF world champion and 3-time IPF masters. So in following him online and trading messages, and when I post, I tag him and he'll DM me, Paul, I really like that. Thanks. And like he's had he got DVT on a flight and it really cost him some time because he got a blood clot. So what we started this conversation with hours ago, I was very cognizant when they did my joint replacement to monitor that. And I was on medication to make sure I didn't get a blood clot. And, I had to wear TED socks and all that good stuff because he got it on a flight and the blood thinners he was on for about half a year really kind of knocked down his strength, justifiably so. But yeah, I think the world of Brad,
he was like him and what was his brother's name?
Yeah, Carl. So I did a
Was
when
it
I did
Kyle?
Carl,
Carl,
and Carl
that's
and
right.
Wade.
Carl and Brad, yeah.
Yeah, Carl Wade, and Wade's the
Yeah,
baby.
Wade too. Yeah, there was three. I mean, those guys were like, dude, and their dad was like a Packer, like
Yeah,
Green Bay.
Gail Gillingham's in the in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Brad writes about him a lot. He pulled like 1135 rack pull when he was in his 50s in his garage, and he would write it on the wall.
yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah, when I tried out to become a pro strongman in Boston in '02, it was a pro-am. So I'm in the AMs, and the pros, it was reigning world's strongest man Sven Carlson had won it in September. So this is February. He was there to go in to win the title, but I saw Carl Gillingham at 38 beat him, and he did a medley that would turn anybody white. Yeah, Carl Gillingham was no joke either.
yeah.
I don't know either of those men, but I look up to them, and they're trained. Brad posts, and he's on the hmb.org every so while. He just posted this week on that website about HMB, but he posts his training, and he's I don't know if he's retired not or yet, but he's an amazing guy. He looks great. Good for him. He's a little older than me, I think, or we're all a little older than you, Chad, but and look at just a wealth of knowledge, and look at everything he's done.
Yeah, that was we talked about the other day when we were talking, and then like I always looked at like Anthony Clark and Odie Wilson, and they passed away too soon with so much knowledge. And I mean, you can go back and look at some of my when I was bigger, and I kind of had that. I have chronic compartment syndrome in my lower legs, but you saw that like purple in my shins and stuff, and there's a point where you got to go, you know what, man, being big and being strong is cool, but I also want to be on this planet a lot longer. So, and I think even Louis, somebody said, Louis said it, there's a region you don't see 300-pound 70-year-olds.
Yeah. I don't, I know the history, if you will. I never met O.D. Wilson. He set the all-time total record and beat Bill Kazmaier's record in like 90 or 91, but then soon thereafter he was leaving a radio station and dropped dead in the parking lot. Yeah. So it's sadly,
I mean, just being that big is it. I don't care who you are, the human body's not made to carry that kind of weight for that long.
Yeah. No, so my senior year of high school, right when I graduated, that in '86 they released the Teen Nationals, was a full page in Powerlifting USA, and there's a picture of Anthony Clark at the Teen Nationals benching 611. And I'm like, oh my God, how, right? So that was '86. So I moved to California in 1991. And the year prior, they had the big Malibu Classic. So then they were having the second one. So the Malibu Classic was a bench press deadlift meet out in Malibu at a place called Calamigos Ranch. So I went out there with my buddies, and it was really neat because like I had seen top level lifters, but this was at this meet the year before. Ken Lane had set the all-time record in the supers, but he dropped down to 242 and benched 661, which was the all-time record. But I saw Anthony Clark there, and he was benching. He wasn't as big as I thought he would be, but he looked healthy, and he was very dense. He was, I don't know, 5'9", like 330.
He wasn't very tall.
Right. So that was in 1991. So then I didn't see him again in his career. He flirted with the 800-pound bench, but he had he had the all-time record in the bench a few times with that reverse grip in the high sevens, right? And he also had set an all-time total record in a federation with an 1,100-pound squat. He was still a 3-lift lifter. So then I go to the first WPO, and 9 years later with Art, and man, we're at the hotel, and like, here comes Anthony, and he's like, I've never seen somebody in worse shape within 10 years. Like, it was just sad.
Yeah.
He looked so sad, so bloated, and having trouble breathing, moving. And it was just an absolute shame. God rest his soul. Cause
I've never heard anyone say anything bad about him. I know he did a lot of stuff for the youth in Hawaii, and, he was a Christian, and he did a lot of stuff with charity Christian stuff. And yeah, it's just like, man, of all the people that pass away, that's the guy you want to see keep going, because he's just a good dude.
Yeah. So I, at the time, he was based down in Houston, Texas, Pasadena, Texas, right? Anthony was, and so I had become friends with Tim Bruner. I remember Tim.
Oh yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
So they were buddies because Tim was in Austin, but they were in the Texas powerlifting scene together, and I was still in California then. But Bruner was pretty honest. The older guy then, like in his late 30s, then he's like, and he liked Anthony. He goes, you know what's killing Anthony? He goes, he's dying of a broken heart. Like I guess he had been involved in some relationships where women just used him.
Yeah.
If you will, and like because Anthony had been mainstream. He had been in Muscle Fitness.
Yeah.
He had been in Iron Man magazine, and Terry Todd had profiled him, and he was Toka belts, and there was a clothing line called Latour for big guys. He was and living in Texas is not that expensive, so Inzer had sponsored him. He just sadly
See, I thought he was back in Hawaii near the end. I didn't know he was in Texas.
No, I don't know I know he lifted at the Hawaii Invitational a few times, but I don't know if he ever lived there.
Oh, okay.
But sadly he's no longer with us. So you lifters out there, take care of your health. Blood pressure. When someone says high blood pressure, just your first reaction should be that's kidney damage. So take a look at that and take care of yourself. Be careful.
Yeah, I think I'd be hypocritical if I said don't ever get really huge, but I think there's a time and a limit. And when I started, I kind of knew, hey, I'm going to get as big as I can and as strong as I can, but there's going to be a time that this is going to be over, and I need to be prepared for that.
Did you have a doctor that helped you monitor your health and took care of you, Chad?
Yeah, well, when we found out I had low testosterone because I kept getting sick, and so I started seeing a doctor more then, and they didn't know shit. So I actually went to an HRT guy who actually ended up being a really smart guy, and he made me keep up with all my blood work and stuff over the years. So we always kind of knew, and he was cool. I'm like, dude, it's not that bad. Look at what I do. Like, I'm willing to, it's a little out of normal, but I'm willing to accept that part. And he's like, okay,
Yeah.
So he was cool about it. He's like, but you are gonna, you can't do this forever. And I go, yeah, I know, I get it.
Yeah, I had two doctors. One was kind of HRT based, but then I had one who was HRT even more aggressive in California. But because if I was very candid in depth on my Under the Bar podcast and my use of I used PEDs, but in order to maintain my job and do it legally and safe for my health, I had to have prescriptions. And because the law will still state you can take a medication if a doctor deems that it's needed for your health. So I'm not trying to be funny about it or glib or, like I believe you should protect your health first and your freedom second, and your career and so forth. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that. So I had a doctor in California that took really good care of me. Then when I moved to Texas, I had another doctor that took care of me, not as aggressive as my California doctor, but I was under 300 pounds by then and not pushing the envelope, if you will. And but that's great because that's so if you graduate high school at 270, what was your I know well in my mind. It's online, and I think we talked about before that my performance in the 30 years ago in the 95 Cal States. I came in second to Steve Dennison, and then there was someone else behind me. But I weighed 262 that day, and then in 96 that summer, 14 months later, I was 296 at the WPC Can-Ams in Vegas and came in third. And then by 98, I was up to 325. So I gained 60 good pounds of productive weight, and my total was up about 300 pounds easily. Mm-hmm. When I went full bore into non-tested powerlifting. What was your experience as far as when you figured out your health and figured out your low testosterone based upon sleep? Do you remember your body weight gains and strength gains in a period of time up to your peak?
There's some controversy. I don't want to say controversy, but me and Dave Tate we argue this a lot. When we found out I had low test, my doctor was a master's Highland game thrower. So he knew who I was and what I'd done. I had already broken 2370 or 2380, lifetime drug free. I was 1,000 plus squatter, 7 plus bencher, 7 plus deadlifter. Mm-hmm. And I go, how could I possibly have low testosterone? He goes, we checked it twice. You do. How you got that strong, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on HRT, and I think like I did a meet like right about when I went on, and I totaled 24 or something, which was the plan anyway. And then I think I was on like HRT for a while, and then I actually called Dave up and I go, hey, I'm on HRT, so you know what? Screw it. I'm going to play with it. What should I do? And Dave's like, fuck you. And I go, what? He goes, yeah. I go, what the hell are you talking about? And he goes, you're really clean. And I go, yeah, I told you I was. What's the deal here? He goes, well, I didn't believe you. I'm like, stop fucking with me, man. And so then we went on, and I never really jumped up. I would say I probably leaned out a little bit, and I probably put on a little bit more muscle.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at my tracking, like over my career, I've basically, my very first 3-lift competition, I totaled 1,700.
Okay.
11 years later, I totaled 2,733. Or it was like 10 years later. I put on about 100 pounds a year on my total.
Mm-hmm.
And it tracked that same way the whole time.
Nice.
So when I went on, and even when I did go on, like the European guys would laugh at me because they're like, dude, you're basically clean then. And I'm like, what? Because I never took, I think the most I ever took a couple weeks before one of the Arnolds, I was on like 1,000 of test and maybe 75 of tren every other day. That was about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I never seen a huge difference, but I have known when I started looking into it, it's like it affects everybody differently. Some people get a lot out of it. Some people don't get as much. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Like, and personal experience, I used, and it was productive and it worked for me. And I didn't, other than
like, if somebody actually asked me, I would go, you know what the biggest difference is? The time frame. Like, I think if you go on, you're going to make gains a little bit faster.
Yeah, and I used to phrase it like that, not to be. I would say, listen, do you want a 28-hour day? Do you want a eight day week? Because you're buying time because you recover, so you can do more work.
Yeah,
you recover better. Your life has to be in order. You have to sleep. You have to have the money for the food. There were times where I made,
that's
you do make gains, and
that's honestly a really good point too, though. Is like, okay, if you are going to go on, get your shit together, because if you go on and you eat like crap and you don't sleep, it's going to help a little bit. But if you're going to spend the money to go on, make sure you're eating enough, make sure you're sleeping enough, because that's what's really going to help it work a lot better.
Oh, by far. Yeah. People do not, the stuff I see online, there's so much good to look at online, and I stay positive, but the stuff I see on YouTube, like about these young kids on steroids, like the history of it, you just see it's not going to end well when you abuse that stuff. And that's not the answer. And at the same time, you're buying black market. You don't know what you're getting, like I was fortunate in that I was getting US pharmaceuticals on my prescription.
I feel like it's the last thing. Like, is your technique right? Is your flexibility right? Is your training good? Like, are you eating good? Are you sleeping good? Like, if you do everything you can do first, and they call it a performance enhancing drug. Like, so get everything the best you can, then use it to enhance what you got.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a track record, even if, I watch a lot of podcasts, and I heard John Hack, who's pound for pound, I believe the strongest powerlifter in the world, it would say now. And he's an engineer by trade. He's very intelligent, and he did it both ways, kind of like I did it to a far lesser scale. I was a national record holder in the drug free when I was totally drug free. And then I was competitive in open drug using. And then when I cleaned out and came back, I just was focused. I would win state meets here in Arizona and set state records. And that's what I wanted to do, on my own terms. But like, yeah, a John Hack, it's already out there. When I heard him quote to Dave, like, I never went more than 350 milligrams. Wow, that's surprising, but what's the guy lying for? I don't believe, I don't believe him to be lying.
No,
And if somebody's lying,
I've experienced that a lot because once I went, when I was younger, I wrote papers on steroids and I believed all the government bull crap. And so I'm like, all right, steroids are bad. I'm not taking steroids. I don't care. I'm going to compete in this sport no matter what. Not doing it. And then when it was like I needed it and like, okay, well, I'm on HRT, so why wouldn't I just play around? And I started asking more questions. And almost everybody I talked to was very open about it. And I found out that there are some guys that go crazy with it, but the vast majority of guys, they're not doing what people think they're doing. They're doing quite a bit less.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a less could be more kind of possibility there.
Yeah, I would opine too that I would say, like, look, if you like, I never lived, I was a good sized guy and I wanted to be super heavyweight, and I was able to compete nationally super heavyweight and do okay. Right. So like, but I laid the groundwork in that I played high school football and I did martial arts. And then even in law enforcement, I became a defensive training tactics coordinator and I was a firearms instructor. So I was moving my body around doing things. You were an athlete too. Look at the history. Like we said, John Cole, what an athlete he was. He had the all-time total record. Then Don Reinhold held it. He was a college athlete, a college football player and a basketball player. Look at and then after him, who broke his total record? Bill Kazmaier, who played football at the University of Wisconsin and and then he played in the USFL for a little bit. What an athlete he was. Then Dave Passanello broke it. Dave Passanello was a college. My point is, look at the amount of work and ligaments and tendons and activity these guys did for their body to hold together. But these kids nowadays, if you're coming up and I don't look. So the top super heavyweight now is Oliveras, is over 2,500 raw, and then I don't know. I think he played football, and I've watched him on YouTube. I saw him at the Arnold at a distance last year, and I looked at his body. Go, yeah, that you could see why within the same area. I saw him, Joe Kovacs, who just 2 days ago squatted 750 for 8 on Instagram because he's the second best.
I reposted that. I'm like, oh man, you people that think throwers only throw a 16-pound shot put, these guys are strong, man.
Yeah, I walked over. So at the Arnold last year, right by the Rogue exhibit was next to the USAPL. USAPL had a booth. So Oliveras was probably 50 feet away from Kovacs. Kovacs was standing next to Ray Williams. And I just looked at all of them together and I'm like, man, I know my best official squat's over 800, but I was tall and lanky compared to them.
Yeah.
Just how they're built, but just how much work has gone through those bodies to withstand that before. And I'm not saying none of those people have been implicated for drugs at all. I'm just saying, like, you got to put work through the body. You're going to blow off ligaments and tendons, and you just won't get that strong. So,
well, I think one of the things, like with me entering powerlifting as late as I was, I mean, I was 27 when I did my first bench meet, but I had been lifting the whole time I was lifting, and I was doing 5 sets of 5, and I didn't do a lot of singles or anything because I didn't know powerlifting yet. But I always liked to lift heavy. So like, I think that built a lot of tendon and ligament strength where through my whole career, I've had a lot of muscle tears, never torn a tendon or ligament. I've strained them, never tore them.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up loving the bench press, and I was a terrible bench presser. To start in my high school varsity line, you had to bench 250, which sounds like not a big deal, but we had about 12 kids that could do it. So I started, I was doing push-ups. So you're talking 1985, right?
Right.
Like I put in the dues. I paid the dues. I laid the foundation. I started studying West Side because I couldn't even get over 400. And then by doing West Side, when I found them in 93, I was at a commercial gym. And that's when I first touch and goed. I was 25 years old. I first touch and goed 400. So then fast forward. So if I did the first time I really started benching, it took me 16 years. And in 2000, I won the USPF Bench Nationals in Burbank, and I lived in California. But Josh Bryant was there, Art LeBaire, a lot of good. I think his last name was Franco. He went on to bench 700 later with Mendelson. But I won best bencher. I did a 534. I weighed 289 in a borrowed bench shirt from Josh Bryant because I could do about 450 raw, put on a shirt, and I got 80 pounds out of it. So I spent 15 years earning that.
Yeah.
Right? Like
yeah.
it wasn't easy. Like if you talk to someone, and when young lifters, I never tried to dissuade anybody. But I always say, there's a reason the quadrennial is a thing. Like the Olympic cycle is 4 years. College is usually 4 years. High school used to be. Think of how different you were as a high school freshman versus a senior, right? Like, so if someone, and you probably do this too when you're trying to coach someone, listen, give me 4 years and we'll figure out if you're any good.
Yeah.
Because you got to build a base, and I don't want you to get hurt, and you can't rush this. But I think nowadays, if you say, give me 4 years, which is, I'm bad with math, but you're talking about not quite 1,800 days. Like, oh my God, no.
Well, no, if you think about it, and I try to, when I interview people on here, I usually try to explain how long they've been in it. Because you'll see somebody come up and he benches like this big bench, and everybody's like, holy shit, where'd this guy come from? It's amazing. And you're like, yeah, he's probably been lifting for 15 years. Mm-hmm. Like he didn't do that within a year or two. Like that 700 bench didn't come in a year or two. It came from the 10 or 15 years he's been doing this.
Yes. Yeah. You really have to lay a foundation in all the lifts. And it certainly. I
mean, I think that's one of the reasons I can't remember who I was talking. I was talking to somebody, and we were talking about how within 1 or 2 years, like so many, or maybe it was something Matt Wenning had said, like how many lifters drop off within 1 or 2 years? Like it's astronomical.
Yes.
And it's like they think you can get strong in a year or two. And it's like, that doesn't happen. Like you can make gains in a year or two, but like to get really sick, crazy strong, we're talking 5-10 years, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't want to ever repeat myself. And I love podcasting with you and anybody that invites me on, because I've been on a few, but like, as I love the sport, the dumbest thing I ever hear is I'll see someone in a gym in town or at a meet that hasn't done a meet, but I know them. And I'm like, hey, man, when are you going to do a meet? And I'm supportive. And they're like, well, I looked at the records. Listen, what crap pile activity do you want to be involved in that you set a record day one? Because they've been doing powerlifting for over 60 years.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are good at it. That's the dumbest answer you can give me.
Yeah.
Because until you, and I always do this, I'll hold up. I'll say, until you lift it on the platform, this is your lift.
Yeah, you've lifted zero.
Man. And I'm trying to be supportive.
And just think about, I was one of those guys too. Well, okay, I read about that powerlifting stuff. I'll do it when I can bench this or when I can do that. And my part of my strength powerlifting career didn't start till I did my first meet. Because that's when my knowledge like truly began to start. Like just go do the meet. You're going to learn so much doing your first meet that's the catalyst. Like don't think you're going to gain all this knowledge and then you're going to go do a meet. Like it doesn't work that way. You go do the meet, you suck, but you learn all this shit and then you get better.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing like when I just, it takes you back to being, like, the weekend of the Arnold, I was convalescing, healing my hip up, just sitting at home, but it was beautiful. I could watch the Arnold Strongman was on, and I had one of my clients there, young Iker was there. He's a young kid from Mexico, but comes up to Arizona. So I trained him, and he won his division, and I'm coaching him, and it's so exciting. And he went 9 for 9. That's what I tell these lifters. If it's your first meet, let's get in with something that you've never, let's get all the lifts in, let's get the experience, and I'll coach you. And if you're close to something I'm paying attention. If you're close to something on the third attempt deadlift that could change you from first to second, okay, let's go for it if it's within reason. But it doesn't really matter what you do with this. It just matters.
It matters that you do the meet. Yeah.
Yeah. And go the full process.
I have a client who was indoor football player. And he just went to the Sheriff's Academy, got through the Sheriff's Academy, and we talked him into doing his first meet because I still want him to compete. He still wants to compete, but he had to do so much running during this meet that he lost quite a bit of size and he lost some strength. And he's like, man, it just sucks because I was squatting this and now I'm squatting this. And I'm like, it's not even about that, dude. It's going and having a meet, setting numbers at the meet, and then all the stuff you're going to learn from this meet. Like this is just to get in there, have some fun, get the feel for what it is, compete again, build that fire, like stoke that fire. And I go, it's everything. It's after. That's when all the good the really cool stuff's going to come after.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's like, it's that old adage, because I'm a big football fan, right? And I watch football and I listen to the announcers, and they always say the same thing. The greatest improvement in a football team is between game 1 and game 2.
Yeah.
Because you haven't been under fire that season. And, even if you had scrimmages or preseason, but it's different. So you can make improvements and the coach can film it and adjust it. You can figure out who fits, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Same thing with a lifter. There should be an exponential improvement in performance between meet 1 and meet 2.
Yes.
But the key is doing meet 1 and not, getting the attempts in, learning how it works, learn how your body feels, seeing if you like it. You might not like it. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Some things people think they want to do some things and you're like, well, it might not be for you. There's other activities, so, but yeah, I'm like you. And then again, with like you said before, you went up 100 pounds. That was the old, like Ken Leisner standard used to talk about, like every year, if you're powerlifting, your total should go up 100 pounds while you're a young lifter.
Mm-hmm.
Young being also in your lifting career, right? The trajectory.
Yeah.
I do believe I think it's Marty Gallagher says it, because I listened to his podcast with Jim Steele, Iron Company, and Ed Cohen. I think one of them said this. They go, you really got about 20 years from when you drop the hammer. So let's say when you get out of high school, you really drop the hammer on a strength sport and you don't get any injuries. You're gainfully employed in some way, shape, or form that you can support eating and training and going, and taking care of your responsibilities and be able to focus on lifting. And for me, I actually found that to be true. Like I really started dropping the hammer when I was 18, when I was graduating high school. And when I was 38, I came in second in Texas Strongest Man, promoted by Josh Bryant. That was in that Atlantis format. But I was, it wasn't powerlifting, but I was strong. I did a 700-pound trap bar deadlift, a 325-pound standing push military press, a 400-pound raw bench, which sucked because if you did the trap bar, your pecs were cramping anyways, and I've had pec tears. And then we did a loaded pull-up with body weight. And then we did 5 events, the inch dumbbell handle. And the only guy that beat me that day was a guy from Tennessee that came over that Josh trained. He benched over 600 raw, and our other lifts were equal. So but at that point, Chad, I was training as hard as I could, and my trajectory was upwards for about 20 years. And then there was the next year there was no contest like that. That format died out because Josh had won America's Strongest Man the year before that. And we'd done that. Cohen was Ed Cohen was the head judge. It was a neat thing in Massachusetts. Anyways, like then the year after that, like I was getting ready to move and transferred, and so my focus changed. So like, do you feel about the same way? Do you feel that you had about 20 years once you dropped the hammer in productive strength training?
No, I had a lot less. I would say maybe 12 to 15. But I had a lot of other issues going on, with my narcolepsy and my sleep and stuff. And it's not an excuse. I feel like I did awesome. And I'm doing great in life now. I just had some things and I didn't know how to handle them with the training and everything. And I pushed too hard. If I could go back and do it all again, I could do things a little bit differently, but I'm perfectly happy with how it went. So, I mean, I figure basically 99 to 2009, and I still had some good stuff. My bench was over 900, but I went to do a meet and I tore the crap out of my tricep, and that was in like maybe 2010 or something, I think. So somewhere between 10 and 12 years was about my peak. And it was just like, all right, I gotta take care of my mental health and get some things straightened out.
Okay. And at the end of that run, at the end of that 10 or 12 years, how old were you calendar years when it hit? were you in your 40s?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was able to maintain my strength quite a bit. And even until recently, it's only because of certain injuries or stuff, and I'll back off. And then once I get this move done, I'll probably start lifting a little heavier again. Because I really wouldn't mind trying to do some masters throwing.
Nice.
So I don't have any shoulder injuries. I don't have any hip injuries. I don't have any knee injuries. Like my body's I pretty much do whatever the hell I want. And I love running around with my great nieces like I'm a kid. So
Nice. Yeah, nice. What do you good genetics. What, like we were talking about why I probably got a hip replacement, and I had been DMing, and I love Donnie, going back and forth to Donnie, and he's like, I was doing the last couple of years, I was doing that, like putting big dumbbells on my hips and open them up, like he talks about body temperature. And I mean, at the same time, Donnie just had both knees done, so my knees are fine too. So it is what it is, right? Like, what do you attribute your joint health and overall joint health specifically to? What could you?
I would have to guess that there's some genetics in it.
Sure.
But I would lean more towards technique, flexibility, mobility, and really focusing on weaknesses. I think even though I didn't finish I didn't go into PT school, but I still worked in PT for a long time and I learned a lot. I think that actually helped me some because it made me more aware of injuries, and if things are happening, how do I stop them? And then I was really fascinated with, learning how the body is supposed to move and correct movement patterns. So I was, throughout my whole powerlifting career, I was always kind of looking at that stuff. And I think that played a big part in me getting through it without destroying myself.
Nice. Sure.
I mean, I feel lucky. I mean, again, I have a lot of gratitude in my life. I'm very happy with my life. Like, I was able to be, I was ranked number 2, I think, in Powerlifting USA. I've won WPO semifinals. I've won a bunch of world competitions, and I'm 53, and I'm still in pretty good shape. I want to gain back some strength, but I'm still pretty strong. Like, I feel lucky.
Yeah, well, I always used to say too, the harder I work, the luckier I got, and the smarter, right? Because you did it correctly, and you had a PT background, and you intelligent man, and you were for somebody that I would imagine, to me, I'm a student of the game too, and you seem the same way.
Yeah,
we're looking at, hey, this worked, that this didn't work, this worked for somebody, I don't want to repeat this thing, and when you say masters throwing, are you talking in the Highland Games or track?
Both.
Yeah, because I've never done either. I went to a few Highlands Games, and I did the Huntington Beach ones, like the Farmers Walk, and then I went to the Queen Mary, and they were showing me the cabers, and I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna whack myself upside the head.
Cabers are fun.
I'm not a big fan. That's
I actually won because when I was kind of going through some of the mental stuff, and my family and my training partners, they had like a, what do you call it, an intervention. And they're
Sure.
pretty much like, dude, you're killing yourself. You need to change something. Like, your depression is out of hand and you need to stop. And so we talked a lot, and the consensus was, all right, let's back off of lifting. Not, my training partner still lifted and I still went to the gym with them, but the idea was give my body a break from the heavy lifting and just start throwing and maybe compete in the Highland Games for a couple years. Which I did, and I had a blast. But per my usual crazy self, I started trying to lift heavy again at the same time. And I kind of ended up having to pull back. But I didn't ever reach like pro level throwing, but I was almost immediately in the A's, which is the highest amateur.
Yes.
And I won Caber Nationals. I won Weight for Height Nationals. I did pretty good, I think, for just coming into it.
Of course.
And it
sure.
was
good.
So much fun, because it was like, wait a minute, I get to move, and it's not about how heavy the implement is. It's like how much force I can put behind it. I'm like, this is fun. I like this, and then after a couple of years, I started training for powerlifting again, and just injury after injury after injury.
Yeah. No, as much as I love powerlifting, since my four surgeries, like my pec reattachment, I can barely get behind. I can't get my hands back on a squat bar. The bigger, the fuller, the longer squat bar that even the USPA uses now, I could, but I'd need a training partner to stretch that out. And to be honest with you, like I'm not afraid of anything, not in a macho way, but like I have never been in pain in my whole life. And I saw my dad pass away. He was in chronic pain due to a bad back surgery. So if I was in pain, even this hip was an annoyance to walk with. I would sleep. I couldn't feel it. I could sit, I could drive 100 miles and not hundreds of miles, not feel it. So
Yeah.
I've never been in pain, nor do I want to be,
Right.
but throwing never spoke to me. I've seen it, but I broadcast the last two Strongman Nationals, the one in the year before in Dallas and this last year in Denver. This year coming up, it's in Charlotte, so I don't think we're going to get the broadcast. It's just too far away because we're based here in Arizona. We drive out our equipment. But anyways, my point is I watched it and I'm like, man, I'm 57. In the 60 and older, I think there was only 3 or 4 guys in that whole category, and the weights weren't even daunting. I'm like, I did competitive strongman, but the events are kind of different now. Like, they
Yeah.
didn't. There's about 50 different events you can test. So that kind of interests me. I mean, I'll lift weights to the day I die, but it's
I will lift for the rest of my life. If I can't lift, I don't see me going on much longer.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed your content this past year, my friend, watching it. You put in a lot of volume. I'm looking forward to getting back into the gym. But you said earlier, yeah, I've been lifting for my whole life, but like, this is like, for anybody listening, okay, again, I've had surgeries before. I rushed a surgery back and in my reattached pec in my left arm. All my injuries have been bad in my left. I hurt that left knee once bad. Now my hip's been replaced. I blew that pec out totally bad, had it reconnected. And when I was coming back, I came back too soon. And the surgery held up and it broke my humerus in half.
Ugh.
To the point I couldn't feel my fingers for a few years. And then the anterior serratus tore on that side. So, but that all being said, like when I broke my arm benching in 04, I was 36. I took 6 months off because I'm like, man, they went into bone and they did this. And then I came back in 05, I was 37 years old and I came in 4th in America's Strongest Man. So right now with my hip, I saw the surgeon yesterday and he said, okay, you were operated on the 25th of February. He goes, May 15th in 10 weeks. He goes, that will be as strong as it ever. He goes, you could hold 1,000 pounds on that. So I'm not in any rush. And I realize I have 57-year-old body parts too. Yeah. And they've kind of fallen out of shape. So I'm going to be stealing stuff from your page and all my friends. And I'm going to come back. And for the first time ever, I'm going to build my body in a fun way. Like, I haven't done belts. I have access to different gyms out here. I'm going to go use belt squats and different equipment and so forth. And because we've all seen Commando, right, with Arnold?
Yeah.
All right. How Arnold, remember he figures out they took his daughter. So he goes to start his Blazer and he looks and the engine wires are taken. So he started down the hill in the Blazer. That's how I treated my body for 30 years. So
yeah,
one more ride. So now I'm going to take care of my body, Chad.
It's with this one, cause I've had a couple injuries. I had a deal with my back that took a long time to figure out. And then once I figured it out, it took me a while to heal it. And then I had some hip adductor stuff. And like my last dynamic day, I'm like, oh, hey man, everything feels good.
Uh-huh.
But I'm really going back to like, let's start with a little more of the basics. Let's make sure the hip muscles are all good. And let's make sure the knees are stable. And like, I'm doing a lot more stability and active athletic work to go with the strength training. Which, when you think about it, in my powerlifting career, that's what I was doing, and then went into powerlifting.
Uh-huh.
And I did really good for a long time. And then when I got into like, oh, I'm a super heavyweight, I need to lift heavy and rest, and I wasn't doing all that athletic stuff, that's when I started getting a lot of injuries.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
keep my ability to move and function well, but try to add gaining strength in with that.
Yeah, no, I'm guilty of doing the same when I look back. Once I de-emphasized powerlifting per se, but I was still doing it, right? I did a meet. I did meets for 33 years. I did one in 86 and I did my last one in 2018. So
Yeah.
it's a third of a century, but like I was a shadow of myself, if you will. Not well, when I came back to do USAPL meets, right? I was living here in Arizona. The USAPL was run, it was drug tested and run by Richie Winter, who's IPF Hall of Famer. Super nice. If you don't know Rich, he's the salt of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic lifter. He one of his grad assistants used to be Brian Shaw at ASU. He spotted talent. So I respected him. So the first when I qualified and was drug free for over 3 years under their standards, 09, 10, and 11, I would go to the USAPL state meet because it was always the week before school started, like August, right? School starts early out here. When my schedule would get busier when my kids were in school.
Mm-hmm.
I would go up there. I'd be in the 275s. I'd say, "What's the state record, raw, drug tested?" And it's usually about double body weight. I'm like, okay, it's 540. I'd
Right.
do that on a second or third attempt in the squat. I'd bench about 50, 60 pounds over my body weight on the bench because my repaired pecs. I didn't push them per se, and I would bench close grip, and then I'd pull low sixes. I'd set a total record. I did that 3 years straight, and then the USAPL, Richie had some hip injuries and needed his hip replaced, and he got burned out, so he stepped away, and it wasn't here. So, whenever I did it, I did it. But when I look back then, I just did the bare bones. I'd come in and do 3 heavy squats. I'd do some speed deadlifts, and then I didn't do a lot of the assistance. I didn't have time. Same thing with everything. So, like you, when I come back from this injury, I'm going to enjoy pulling sleds and glute ham work and revert. Just I didn't do a lot of that stuff. I got away from it for a long time, and I'm not going to do anything that doesn't build my body up. And I enjoy all that. And like what we talked about, if you look at Brad Gillingham and his latest post on what he does with sandbags and farmer's walk, and he does these strength circuits. Yes, please. That's exactly what you need. That's what guys like us need, and the old adage that Bill Pearl, God rest his soul, who passed away when he was 99 the year before last, he fell over on his tractor and it killed him.
Really? I didn't know
he was 99 years old, but he was still out doing stuff. And he said this he goes, people like guys don't like cardio. He goes, the body doesn't know how the heart gets elevated, just elevate it. So if guys like you and I like to do strength cardio, it's even better for us. It's not hamster wheel cardio and all that garbage.
Well, I'm looking forward to that too. Once I get this move finalized down in Pahrump and get my Barn Dominion done, I'm going to have a lot more space.
Nice.
Which is going to be
nice.
great.
Yeah, I'm looking at I don't want everybody to think I'm literally in the dark, but I am in the dark.
You have a little Darth Maul thing going on right now.
I keep my house in Arizona nice and cool and low slung, so I didn't want to break contact with you and plug in the light over there.
Yeah.
But
well, we've been going. We already been going for about 2 hours and 45 minutes, so I'm gonna have to cut this into a 2-episode deal. But the funny part is like I know we could keep going, and there was still some stuff we mentioned in the beginning we didn't even get to yet. So I think we'll wrap this one up, but definitely I'll try to see what we have next coming up and have you back on. I think there's so many different things and avenues we could go.
Yeah, I really look forward to it, Chad. I'm looking forward to it, and
I hope everybody likes these podcasts because to me, it's like this is 2 old powerlifters, strength athletes just talking, and everybody gets to kind of sit in and listen.
I really like the format, so I digest podcasts. I like they haven't. If you look at Iron Dot Company, like I said, Marty Gallagher and Jim Steele, they just started doing their own on YouTube. Like they do them once every few weeks, and it's just 2 old strength experts sitting and talking, and I get so much out of it. There's nobody really doing what we're doing. Yeah, we're not. Nobody's doing this anymore like we are. And I just try to make it helpful for people, and at the same time, I do. I'm a training editor at heart, so I learn stuff from you too. So I get benefit out of it. I hope, and it seems that we certainly enjoy it. So I hope anybody else does.
Yeah. All right, Paul. I appreciate you being on.
Yeah,
And,
this was great.
We'll hopefully schedule another one here real soon.
Yes, sir, Chad. You take care.
You too.
Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit couragebarbell.com. Until next time.